It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a young man there lived whom you may know as the lover of Annabel Lee. And this young man he lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. But he loved with a love that was other than love, he, the lover of Annabel Lee, a love from which the winged seraphs of heaven could not deliver me. And this was the reason that, long ago, in this kingdom by the sea, I walked out into the stormy deep, his beautiful Annabel Lee. The damned were not half so tormented in hell. In life I could never be free. Yes, that was the reason, as all men know, in this kingdom by the sea, that the current pulled me under by night, drowning and killing sad Annabel Lee. But his love, it is stronger by far than the grave, than the death I thought would free me. And the truth is revealed to me, that neither the angels in heaven above, nor the demons down under the sea, can ever dissever my soul from the soul of the lover of Annabel Lee. For the moon never beams without bringing him dreams of the beautiful Annabel Lee, and the stars never rise but I open my eyes. I am his lover, his love, in death still his bride, in my sepulchre here by the sea, in my tomb by the sounding sea.
Today I am combining my two favorite art forms, makeup and poetry. The poem in the intro was my own rewritten version of Edgar Allan Poe's Annabel Lee, interpreted with a much darker tone than the original, and flipped to be told from the perspective of Annabel Lee herself rather than that of her lover. The makeup I am doing is based on this interpretation of Annabel Lee, her as a drowned spirit unable to find peace in the afterlife because of her lover's obsession. I designed the look to combine beauty and decay in order to mirror the way her ghost straddles the line between life and death. To start the look, I'm going to be working on the prosthetics. For this, I'm going to be using spirit gum, scar wax, a spatula, and a lot of petroleum jelly. When you're working with the scar wax, you want to make sure that anything you don't want it to stick to, like your spatula or your fingers, is covered with the petroleum jelly. Take a glob of the wax with your spatula or however you want to get out of your tub, and then using your fingers, just roll it into sort of a cylindrical tube. This is what we're going to use to make the skin look as though it's being sort of peeled back and those shells are pushing up out of it. Now you're going to apply some spirit gum wherever you want that wax to stick. That's going to give it a little bit more adhesion and keep it on a little bit more securely than just putting the wax directly on your skin. And then once you have the cylinder in place, you're going to start smoothing out one side. I like to use my fingers and then go in with a spatula, and the smoother you can get this edge, the more realistic it's going to look as though it's actually part of your skin. And while you're smoothing, just make sure you keep recoating everything with petroleum jelly, that way the wax isn't going to start sticking to your tools. Now we're going to add the shells that are breaking through the skin. Mine need a little bit of pre-assembly because I wanted them to look like actual clams, which of course have two shells and not just one. So I got a bag of dollar store shells and just glued a couple of them together using liquid latex. And then once my clams were dry, I applied some more liquid latex to the back and then stuck them to the skin. Now I'm adding some more spirit gum and adding some moss. You could use real moss if you wanted. I just grabbed a bag of fake moss from the craft store, and this of course is going to make us look like we are mossy and algae and just covered in nice ocean slime. Now I'm adding some more wax just to help complete that circle of skin that the clamshells are breaking through. Of course you don't need to put it where that moss is because the moss is covering the area where the skin would be. If you wanted to do an easier version of this look without using the scar wax, you could always just surround the base of all the shells entirely with moss. Now with some translucent powder, I'm just going to dust that all over the wax, which is going to help take down the shine, make it look more realistic, and also kind of get rid of some of that petroleum jelly sliminess. I'm adding another prosthetic to my collarbone, just using the same procedure as one for the forehead. I found some large snail shells at the dollar store, which I thought were really cool, and I liked the look of this on the collarbone, and I thought it was a nice variation from just the clams, so I'm using this one here, and then of course just surrounding it with more wax. I actually ended up moving this one later. You'll see me put it in a different position. Because I had it set directly on the collarbone, when I moved, it sort of hit the shell against that rigid collarbone, which didn't work super well, and it made it kind of unstable. So I would suggest putting the whole thing on a more movable piece of skin. Don't have it actually resting on the bone itself. In a second, you're going to notice my neck get really red. I actually applied a prosthetic to my neck, however I decided I didn't like the way it looked, so I took it off, which involved some rubbing, and because my skin is super fair and sensitive, it turned bright red, so just ignore that. But I decided to apply the prosthetic to my cheek instead, and just use the same steps as with the other ones, first putting down the wax, making it into sort of a shelf, and then putting on the shells. You'll notice for this prosthetic, I go in with multiple pieces of wax in this same area. I just wanted it to look a little bit more fleshy than it did with that original piece, so just built it up a little bit more and kept smoothing it out. Of course, you can do yours however you like, just use a combination of shells and scar wax to make the prosthetic look best to you. I'm sticking down the shell by my ear without any wax around it because I already knew I was going to be covering that whole area with the fake moss, so you wouldn't see any of the wax anyway. Now that the prosthetics are on, we can do skin. So just apply whatever primer works best for your skin type, and then take a foundation that is ideally 1 or 2 shades lighter than your natural skin tone. Using something just a little bit paler than you is going to help give you that undead, ghostly, washed out look rather than using something that's your actual skin tone. And I'm just adding some extra foundation to some areas that I thought needed it because I wanted the base for this to be quite full coverage. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm just taking that prosthetic off my collarbone, and you can see my skin again turning bright red. Now I'm taking my concealer and adding it to the central areas of my face as well as around my nose where I get some redness, and under my eyes because we do want this ghost lady to look flawless. Then picking up some translucent powder on my sponge, I'm going to use that to set my face before going in with a big fluffy brush to brush away any excess powder. Now it is time to grossen up those prosthetics. So I'm taking a dark gray eyeshadow on a fluffy brush and applying it to the wax around the shells because I want it to look like the skin here has maybe died and has started to rot. So using stamping motions, I'm applying the eyeshadow darkest right close to the shells and then applying it lighter and lighter as I get farther away from the area. That way it looks like the skin is dying and decaying outwards from those areas. Next, I'm taking a butterscotch yellow shade on a flat shader brush and applying it the same way as I did the gray, just stamping it most concentratedly close to the shells and then more and more diffuse the farther I get away from them. Adding in the yellow just is going to really make the skin look decaying and dead and just disgusting in the best way possible. And now I'm going in and putting down the wax for my new collarbone prosthetic, just a little bit higher above the collarbone so I don't have the same problem as last time. For some added ocean debris, I decided to go in with these sort of plastic fake pearl things that I got from the dollar store. So they're flat on one edge, and I just sort of stuck them around the shells to make it look like maybe there were some pearls growing out of my skin. Again, just mixing that sort of beauty and decay together. You can put liquid latex on the back of them if you want. I just stuck them directly into the scar wax to make it look like they were sort of pushing out of the skin as well, but however you want to apply them. And now I'm adding that shell and scar wax back into my collarbone prosthetic. I'm going to go quite heavy on the contouring for this look. Since we are a ghost, we want to be pretty gaunt looking, so I'm taking my normal contouring shade and applying it to my cheekbones, my nose, and my forehead, before then going in with an even darker shade of contour just to really hollow out and sculpt those areas. I also went quite heavy on the highlight because I wanted this look to be as glowy and wet looking as possible since I am a sea ghost, so applying it to the high points of my face and my collarbones. I put in my colored contacts off camera as well as just finished up that collarbone prosthetic, and now I'm going in with some foundation to make sure that my chest matches my face since it is lighter than my natural skin tone. I wanted the brows to be very bushy and feathery for this look, so I'm taking a tinted brow gel and just brushing all the hairs of my brows upwards so that they look as full and wild as possible. And then starting on the eyes, I'm applying my eyeshadow primer and setting it with a little bit of translucent powder, and then going in with a light gray matte eyeshadow on a tapered blending brush. I'm going to start blending that into the crease, the inner corner, and the outer corner, and I'm also going to be running a little bit of this under my eyes on those dark circle areas to really again emphasize that hollowness and make myself look gaunt and dead. On the same brush, I'm taking the dark gray eyeshadow that we used on the prosthetics, and I'm just applying it to the same areas as the light gray eyeshadow and blending it out. And then still on that same brush, I'm taking a dark, cool-toned brown eyeshadow, and again just applying it to those same areas. Working in this way from lightest to darkest shadow is just really going to make sure that everything blends smoothly, so there are absolutely no harsh lines in this eyeshadow at all. And running a little bit of that dark brown underneath the eyes on the dark circles as well. To really emphasize the under eye bags, I'm going in with a steely blue eyeshadow. This is going to darken up that whole area as well as add in that sort of bluish tone that you naturally get if you have really dark circles. Now, if like me you don't normally wear contact lenses, you may not realize that this is a danger. However, be sure not to hit yourself in the contact lens with your brush. I was lucky and it didn't actually move out of place very much, but you know, just be careful. And now I'm just going in with a clean fluffy brush, again just to blend out all of those edges and make sure everything is seamless. Without picking up any additional shadow, I am using whatever is left on that tapered blending brush to extend the eye bags. Now going in with my favorite part, I'm adding in some of that yellow eyeshadow to the under eye circles as well as a very little bit to the upper eyelid as well. Then you're going to want to take an eyeshadow that's a little bit lighter than your skin tone. I'm mixing together this pink and cream, and just apply it to the center of the lid where we haven't put down any eyeshadow yet. And I added a little bit of that light gray eyeshadow just around my nose to help emphasize the deathly appearance. It's time to add some tears to this tormented ghost. I took an eyedropper with water and used that to trace out the path that tears would naturally fall from my eyes, before taking some dark gray eyeshadow on a pencil brush and diluting it with even more water. Of course, the more water you add, the lighter the color is going to be. With this mixture, I traced out the tear tracks on my face, adding 2 tears to one side and 3 to the other. You can of course use however many tears you like, I just like the way this looked. After I had the tears mapped out, I just went back in over them to make them a little bit messier. I also made the top of the tears a little bit thicker than the bottoms, that way it looked like they were sort of tapering out, as well as just darkening up the lower lash line. To add to the tearful appearance, I took some clear gloss on my fingertip and dabbed it under both eyes. This is going to make the area look wet, as though you've freshly been crying. Since my décolleté area is visible in this costume, I'm going in with that dark contour shade and shading around my collarbones, neck, and ear to make sure that they match the rest of my ghostly appearance. Having assistance to apply fake seaweed to the back of your shoulder is always helpful. After that was on, I went in over the rest of that collarbone area, just adding a bunch more fake moss. For the lips, I started by applying some foundation and blending it out to create an ombre effect from my natural lip color to my foundation. I then went in with a clear lip gloss all over the lips. Then I'm taking some very fine rose gold glitter and dabbing it on the central area of my lips, as well as taking some of the clear gloss glitter mixture and patting it on the inner portion of my eyelids. The glitter is going to add to the reflectiveness and really just increase that wet effect that we're going for. Lastly, for the lips, I'm taking a dark plum lip gloss and dabbing it on the center of my lips and blending it out to create an even more dramatic ombre. I wanted my brows to be a little bit bolder than they were with just the brow gel, so I filled them in with some brow powder. I kept this to the base of the brow, however, so that the top of the brow would still have those hair strokes and still look quite wild. And that's it! I was already wearing my costume, so all that was left to do was wet my hair, set my face with some setting spray, and the transformation into Annabel Lee is complete. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you liked it. I really put a ton of work into creating it. If you're curious about my dress, I actually made it. It is modeled on dresses from the 1840s, which is when the poem Annabel Lee was originally published. Please also keep your fingers crossed for me. This is my entry into the NYX 2017 Face Awards, and I'm really hoping it gets me into that top 30.